You know, when you look at all of these issues, and you look at William Barr confirming the Obama administration spied on the Trump campaign today, it makes investigative reporter John Solomon's column yesterday, the single-sentence Russia bombshell that the Attorney General delivered to Congress, even more powerful. Sounds to me like all the things that we began, and you were at the very beginning of this, you and Sarah Carter, about the surveillance, the 350% increase in unmasking in the last year of the Obama administration, leaking of raw intelligence. John Solomon, how are you?
I'm doing well, and I think today's statements by Attorney General William Barr are even more dramatic than the ones he made yesterday, which were pretty darn important and upon which I wrote that first column. He said today, I don't care what other people are saying, spying on the Trump campaign did occur. He stopped using all the euphemisms of the Brennans and Comeys and Clappers and called it what it was. The United States intelligence apparatus spied on a sitting presidential nominee's campaign, and that's the first time we've had a person in power use the right terminology for what we all knew it was. But more importantly, he said his review would not only focus on the FBI's conduct, it would focus on other intelligence agencies. The first hint that there may have been spying that occurred involving Trump and Russia that go beyond the FBI, the FISA, Pete Strzok, and all the things that we know of, Christopher Steele. That was a big clue to us. And I've been hearing, and I've said on your show many times, Sean, I feel very confident that the FBI case, the Russia collusion case, didn't begin on July 31st, 2016, the date that Pete Strzok signed the
2016,
yeah. I think it began much earlier in this spring of 2016 in a series of actions that probably involved the CIA and the FBI and foreign intelligence friendly agencies in places like London or Italy, where we clearly have allies.
Or Australia.
And Australia, we know clearly. Those are the three that I think most jump out. We've talked about it so much, but to have the Attorney General finally sort of acknowledge that this was more than just an FBI operation. And I think the other thing is the Democrats were, wrestling with him, and he very subtly but very powerfully reminded the Democrats there used to be a time when Democrats cared of the FBI spying on political campaigns and political efforts. It used to be in the 60s. And remember, when all you guys are upset about that, you should be upset about this just as much. I thought that was such a powerful turning moment in the conversation today. But I think for the first time, we are going to get that comprehensive review that so many people have been calling for, and I think we're going to learn a lot of ugly details, and I think a lot of those people who made money on books, the Comeys and others, are going to have a lot more discomfort over the next few months.
I think it's more than discomfort. I see it. Look, if we really go through this and we do it objectively, I think we can say the following, that in fact the FBI and the DOJ, as a matter of fact, Strzok and Page acknowledged that the investigation into Hillary's server was rigged. It was run out of the AG's office at the time. That would be Loretta Lynch, right? What did she know? When did she know it? And that and they wrote the exoneration in May of 2016 before they ever interviewed her or 17 key witnesses. So it was a rigged investigation. Then you got the acknowledgement by James Baker that, yeah, he thought Hillary should have been indicted for the Espionage Act. You know, all these Democrats upset about obstruction of justice, and maybe there's a nugget in the Mueller report, even though it didn't rise to the level of obstruction based on Rosenstein and on the Attorney General Barr. They don't seem to care about the obstruction of Hillary Clinton. They don't seem to care that there was Russia collusion, and that would be one campaign funneling money to a law firm, to an op research firm, to a foreign national that put together a series of documents that is now commonly referred to as the dossier that became the basis of a FISA warrant to spy on an opposition party candidate, even though Bruce Orr's testimony said, don't trust it, she paid for it, it's not verified. Now we know unverifiable because Steele doesn't stand by it. And they then used it months later in the FISA application by committing a clear fraud against the FISA court. Am I right so far?
Yeah, you are right. You are absolutely right.
And then they turned it into a weapon to bludgeon as an insurance policy a duly elected president.
Yeah, that's exactly the narrative that the facts now support. And it took a long time to get those facts out into the open, but they're out there now. And I think now you have the sort of supervision at the Justice Department where real accountability and real clarity can finally be meted out. And I think that when we're done, we're going to find out that this was a multi-agency effort that started earlier, probably as the Clinton email scandal was being wrapped up in a nice bow by James Comey and Loretta Lynch. And then it was designed to change the topic in America from Hillary Clinton's transgressions to what turned out to be a false narrative of Russia-Trump collusion. And I think it's going to involve other foreign powers. I think you're going to find out Ukraine was involved. I think we've been able to begin the documentation, the process of that. It's a complicated story, but I think at the end of the day, the real storyline is our U.S. intelligence agencies, our law enforcement agencies were used to carry out a political dirty trick to delegitimize a duly nominated nominee and then duly elected president. And that is something that should concern us all, whether we're Republican, Democrat, Independent. It's a very, very ugly story.
You know, if it wasn't for the likes of you and Greg Jarrett and Sarah and Sidney Powell, Joe DeGeneva, Victoria Tunsing, you know,
right.
Even Alan Dershowitz not investigating but confirming the law, what the legality of these things are. There wasn't a lot of us, was there?
There wasn't. And, you know, your show was an important bullhorn when the rest of the media wouldn't pay attention to our stories, and we're grateful for that. And I think there's another group of people as well. Let's keep in mind there were 4 or 5 members of Congress who went against their own leadership, their own Paul Ryan.
Devin Nunes, Jim Jordan,
yep.
Mark Meadows.
Yep, Chuck Grassley.
Right.
It's a remarkable group, and it was their determination.
Lindsey Graham, too.
Yeah. Lindsey Graham. Those 4 or 5 people really made a huge difference in fighting to get access to the truth, and then helping. You know, we as reporters could then put it together and do our reporting. But people forget how much resistance there was and how much emotion there was against anyone who dare go against the narrative. And we're very fortunate today that the facts prevailed. And I think there's a lot more facts to done. Our work is not done. We have another year or two of unraveling this onion, as I think you've called it many times, peeling it back even further.
Do you remember that conversation, by the way, when we first really got to know each other as we were beginning this in March of, 2017, I think we began?
I was up in New York, and I was about to walk off your set, and you looked over me and said, please don't stop peeling this onion, and I never forgot that. And it was less than 2 weeks after that, Sean, that I showed up in my home after preparing on one of your shows, and there were 2 gentlemen outside my mailbox at 11 o'clock at night in a blue sedan government car that came up to me and said, we just saw you on Hannity. We want to let you know that there's some bad things that happened, and this is the first time. This is before we knew Steele, right, knew any of these things. They said, our intelligence agencies were used for a political opposition research project. You have to get to the truth, and it was those 2 moments that set us on this long journey.
Stay right there. I want you to look into your crystal ball when we get back. None of this would have happened without people like John and Greg and Victoria and Joe. I'm going to miss people's names, so please, if I'm missing it, don't get mad. It's not on purpose. Everybody that participated, you guys deserve Pulitzer Prizes. Hell will freeze over, but you deserve it. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. All right, a lot to get to today. We will talk to Congressman Tom Graves, and he was with the Attorney General Barr yesterday. Congress is now flipping out that, Bill Barr, the Attorney General, confirming today the Obama administration spied on the Trump campaign. John Solomon, investigative reporter, one of many, many people who part of our ensemble cast. Well, there wasn't a lot of us, but that we wouldn't be where we are today, I don't think, because of their great reporting and hard work. Where is this going? What do you see happening, and how quickly?
Yeah, I think there are 5 seminal moments coming ahead. The first is when the president declassifies all the documents that show what the FBI was telling the court versus what they knew. And I think at that point we will see a gap in evidence that will raise some very, very serious concerns about the fairness of the investigation. I think the IG report will come out, and we'll see what the IG says about the FISA abuses. Very important. Bill Barr will almost certainly announce what he found in his review. That'll be another very important seminal moment. We're we're waiting for a Florida court to release a deposition and series of documents that come from Christopher Steele. We may learn a lot more about who Christopher Steele was talking to, what information he was giving, and who in the Clinton campaign knew, and then something that could happen as early as next week. We should keep an eye on this. I believe Ukrainian authorities are preparing to transmit some information to a prominent American to get to the Justice Department that will acknowledge, Ukraine will formally acknowledge, it attempted to interfere in the 2016 election on behalf of Hillary Clinton, perhaps in concert with some of her supporters or campaign aides. So those are 5 things to watch. I think all of them are very important and will move this narrative very much forward.
Quickly remind our audience in 30 seconds the 5 buckets of material you talk about. One, obviously, was the declassification, FISA warrants, 302s.
Right.
Gang of 8, and the other 2, or 6 you have.
There's an FBI series of emails that show the FBI knew that Steele was on the Clinton campaign dole and had been talking to media before they submitted the first FISA. That's a very big, important one. And then a series of documents that are attached to the Gang of 8 briefing that show the FBI's own review found serious deficiencies with their investigation.
Why is not been released? All right, John Solomon, investigative reporter. You've been amazing.